L'chaim, everybody. Welcome.
Where are we?
Today's class is how to make your marriage thrive.
Oh, I've done that.
So you don't go through a full hour and then find out that I don't know. But I'm going to share some ideas from Torah, and we'll see some insightful analysis about the structure of marriage, the way Torah sees it, and hopefully we'll be able to get some type of insight.
Insight or insight?
And if not, you get your money back.
Okay, get the money back.
Hi, Michael. All right. So one can say that there's a shift, even though I don't like generalizing about society, even though that's what most rabbis do.
That's right.
I also don't like being like most rabbis, even though that's what most rabbis say.
Right.
But nonetheless,
stand up.
having given all those disclaimers, there is a general shift, one can say, in society about the tendency and the understanding of marriage and what role it plays in people's lives. How much is divorce an option? Right? You go back in the day, it was like, no, it wasn't happening.
No.
And there's some statistics over here.
Where are we at?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to give you the page number because then
Then we'll get distracted.
you're not going to listen to me.
Yeah,
You're going to look inside the book.
Yeah, he's right. Okay, I'll shut up.
They say that according to the Census Bureau, between 1960 and 2016, the percentage of children living in families with two parents decreased from 88% to 69%. Okay? It's a huge percentage of full families, two parents. Okay. In 1947, the median age of marriage was for a man 23.7 and for a woman 20.5. But in 2016, it went up to 29.5, okay? That's from 23 to 29. And for a woman, from 20 to 27.
What year was that in?
To 1947 and 2016.
Wow, 47 already.
Yeah.
47.
The truth is, it's not all, most people will look at these statistics and say like, oh, generation, no good, what's going on, society, you got to study Torah. I don't see necessarily this is all as a bad thing. I don't, because I think that this is a result, because in the older generation, people were kind of just, one can say, blindly following a system, just very ingrained and entrenched in the laws of society. They weren't really looking back. So it wasn't a question of so much of what do I want, what do I see from my life. It was just what you did. So now society is kind of, the next generation is looking back and saying, wait a second, I want to kind of think this through. I want to own this. I want to really grow into this process. So as a result of that, people are holding off a little bit more. And because people are more aware and more sensitive to their own experience in life and what's going on versus this is just what it is, so therefore a person leaving the marriage is seen, it's becoming more of an option. Now obviously a divorce is something that's very painful and very tragic and very unfortunate, sometimes necessary, but the bottom line is we can say that some of this tendency towards that direction is becoming as a result of a good thing, that people are asserting themselves more. But the truth is, what is the secret? How is it that a person, it's natural that when a person gets married, things are all amazing, and then naturally, nothing stays amazing forever. Not even this class. It can't stay amazing forever. Right? You need to constantly renew it, refresh it. Somebody said they do everything to sustain their marriage, whatever it takes. We take separate vacations, we sleep in separate bedrooms, as long as to keep the marriage alive.
We have an open marriage.
Right? If that's the mindset, and that's the keeping the marriage alive, then what's the entire enterprise? So today's class, we're going to try to understand a little bit what Torah teaches us about what it would take to really keep things fresh and renewed, and not just a marriage that survives, but rather a marriage that thrives. Now, we're going to start by studying the very origins and the very foundation of what marriage is, okay? So just to be clear, when we talk about marriage, we're talking between a man and a woman.
Oh,
okay?
Phew, I feel better.
And the truth is, the first time we see the concept of a relationship between a man and a woman, the connection, perhaps the marriage between man and a woman, is by Adam and Chava, by Adam and Eve, where we see that at first it was just Adam, and God took a part of Adam, and from that Eve was formed, Eve was made. And then Adam and Eve got together, and they were married. Mazel Tov. Now, understanding it from this mindset, the Torah is telling us something. And the Torah, in essence, is telling us that the truth is, from the very beginning, man and woman were really connected. They were one. One flesh. And that's the concept that we say that there were two parts of one soul. So just like spiritually, we say that before that a man and a woman, they got married, it's really a reunion, because essentially they were two parts. They were together as one when they were up in heaven. So too also, in the physical makeup, the way the Torah describes to us the creation of Adam and Eve, we see that at first Adam and Eve were combined as one being, separated, and then reunited with marriage. So from that mindset, we can see marriage as a very natural thing. You know, if these two parts are really part of one whole, it's natural for them to come back together. But the truth is, at the time they get back together, it gets a little complicated, because there's been a long separation. So at first there's a tremendous amount of attraction, but the attraction is to the otherness, and then it's the otherness that makes it complicated, because now that I was drawn to this other thing, but it's still other. So how do you make it work and keep that attraction alive? Now, the process of marriage in the Torah is very interesting, and it actually it happened in steps. At first, I want to start off with text number 3. I don't know what page it's on.
Text number 3, pages on? There's more text number 3 to different pages.
Find the parsha. It's parshas Ki Seitze.
But it's the wrong one.
It's the wrong text number 3. What does it start with?
The modern day first sharing.
No. Give me the book. Oh. Here. Go to page 169. Let's try that. It's a wild guess.
No, it's probably 170.
Okay, so 170. It wasn't so wild.
169, 170. Yeah.
Here's from Maimonides. The Rambam says as follows. He says, Keidamat Torah, before the giving of the Torah, what was the process of marriage? They saved a lot of money those days.
Much better.
When a man would meet a woman in the marketplace and he and she decided to get married, he would bring her home, conduct relations in private, and thus make her his wife.
Oh, that's easy.
Mazel Tov. That was it.
Very
easy.
inexpensive.
Very inexpensive,
Yeah.
very economical.
Oh, very good, yeah.
However, once the Torah was given, Maimonides says, the Jews were commanded that when a man desires to marry a woman, he must acquire her as a wife in the presence of witnesses. There has to be a whole process.
Gosh.
And then once the photographers got involved, all of a sudden it's a big deal. Only after this does she become his wife. This is alluded to in the verse, when a man takes a wife and has relations with her. This process of acquisition, I know it's a very technical legal term, but it's the idea of a man acquiring. It's not very romantic.
It's not romantic.
But the idea is really a sense of taking care and nurturing and protecting. So that's really what's loaded within that word. So the process of doing that fulfills one of the Torah's positive commandments. The process of marrying a woman is formalized in 3 ways. Now, how can a person marry a woman? So before the giving of the Torah was just hey, you want to get married? Yeah, sure. Mazel Tov. That's it.
After a couple of drinks.
After a couple of drinks. Yes. Before the giving of the Torah, I think they also, they probably smoked as well.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
Yeah, a little bit.
But now we understand there's a process. Anybody know what's the process of marriage in Judaism?
Parents have to get involved, don't they?
Let's just shotgun. That's the preliminary, right? That's before. There's a custom you date. In religious circles, you date, but a lot of people don't know this, but a week before the marriage, you don't see each other. You're not supposed to see each other for an entire week.
So you don't change your mind?
Huh?
You got a week to change your mind.
To kind of make it fresh. There's a lot of explanations. There's a great joke that's not related to our topic, but it's a good joke.
Say it anyway.
We say when it's a good joke, it doesn't have to connect.
It doesn't have to.
There was a yeshiva student that was coming before the holiday of Shavuot. The holiday of Shavuot is the giving of the Torah. And this yeshiva student is in yeshiva, but he's fooling around, he's playing, he's not studying. So his teacher tells him, the giving of the Torah is like the marriage between the Jewish people and the Torah. Right? So as preparation for Shavuot, you should be studying Torah. He says in Judaism, there's a rule that a week before the marriage, the groom does not see the bride. So I'm not opening up any book for a week. L'chaim. Welcome, Michael. Get him something. A book. Here, there's 2 books.
Just list a good book.
So anyway, the point over here is like this. Anybody know what's the process? What is it? We know that when you go to a wedding, there's a lot of things that happen. There's a chuppah. What happens under the chuppah?
Dancing.
No. The chuppah is the canopy. So what is it that accomplishes the marriage? So the truth is, as we're reading over here, there are 3 different options how a person could bring about marriage. He says like this. The process of marrying a woman is formalized in 3 ways. Through the transfer of money. The man gives the woman money, or in this case today, that's done by a ring. Right? Or through the transfer of a formal document. Right? They write down on this and this day and this time, this person from this city and this is committing to take care, etc. Or through intimate relations. When a person has intimate relationship with a woman with the intent and the purpose of this being a way of getting married, that accomplishes marriage. And according to Torah, you could do one of the 3.
Oh, so you don't need to do it.
You don't need to give a ring. You can do it through a document.
Yeah.
Or you could do it
Without the...
And if you notice, if you go to a Jewish wedding, you'll find there's a lot of things going on, right? And if there's a good bar before, you don't care about what's going on. You're just saying l'chaim. But what happens is we do all 3 in reality. We give the ring. At a certain point, you call somebody up to read the document, right? And that was signed prior. And then there's relationships that happen after. Now, what's interesting is, what does chuppah have to do with anything? Okay, what we just read was from Maimonides that the primary method of marriage is through money, through a document, or through relationships. What's the chuppah all about? And why did they break the glass? You know why the man breaks the glass, they say?
Yeah, I know.
Because
that's the last time he...
It's the last time he's going to put his foot down.
That's right.
That was it.
That's it. He concedes control then.
Is that
It's-
the destruction of the temple?
Huh? It is for the destruction of the temple
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
That's what we tell the
He's
man.
being selfish.
The woman knows what it's for.
Destruction of the men's life.
Yeah, it's destruction of his temple. And it's an amazing custom. There's a lot of symbolism and Kabbalistic institutions. The woman surrounds the man, goes around 7 times to really encircle him, and then he gives her the ring, which is another circle, and it's all connected. The truth is like this. When the Torah, so we said, before the giving of the Torah, in order to get married, you just met a woman in the street, you had a couple of drinks or not, and that was it. You went home, you're married. Then with the giving of the Torah, God said there has to be a process. There is an act. But the rabbis went ahead and added things. As they do.
Always add something.
And they said it's not just enough that he went and gave her money, or he signed a document, but there has to be he has to bring her into his house. And the symbol of him bringing her into his house is the chuppah, them getting together under that roof, And then, for those that are familiar, after the chuppah, you go into the yichud room, which is a secluded room that the husband and wife can go in for the first time together, because generally, a man and a woman should not be alone, unless they're married. But in this case, now that they're married, they go into that room together, and there's two witnesses that attest the fact that the room was closed and they were in it together. And then once they're in that room, that is another manifestation of the idea of him bringing her into his house, and that completes the deal. Now, when the rabbis instituted this concept in Talmudic times, there was a year in between these two things. So he would give her the ring, and she would go home to her father's house, and he'd go home. And they would wait 12 months. And then, after 12 months, he would then bring her into his house, and they were married. What happened was, and I heard it, a lot of it had to do with the fact of the exiles, when just by him giving her the ring, she's already considered married to him. But he's not allowed to be completely married until he brings her into his house, as we're going to read in a moment in text number 4. But don't look. Pay attention.
Okay.
So, but what happened is, because of the exile of the generations, that year sometimes things would happen, and then they wouldn't be able to find each other, and she can't remarry because she's technically married to him. So they said, you know what, let's do it really quickly. So today, these two steps that used to take a full year happen in one evening. The giving of the ring, the signing the document, the going under the chuppah, the going into the room, going home at night to a new house. Mazel Tov, everything happens.
Perfect.
Let's open the door all the way, maybe. It's getting a little hot, but if we open it up all the way, it'll be okay. It's also the topic. It's a little...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Wow. The intimacy part.
Okay.
That intimacy always.
Text number 4. According to rabbinic law, a woman who is what's called an arusa, which is what we said that the marriage process began, is forbidden to engage in relations with her husband as long as she lives in her father's home. Because that's what would happen. They would give the thing, and then a man who has relations with his arusa in his father's home is punished with rabbinically sanctioned lashes. He would get whipped.
How many?
How many?
As
9?
much as he can take.
Ooh.
Not one more,
Not one less.
but not one less.
How would you know?
They had a doctor assess it. I'm not making it up. There was
You're not making that up?
no, everything else is just going along with it. Even when the husband married his wife by having relationships with her, we said one of the 3 ways of marriage is relations. So he has relations.
Yeah.
But then he is forbidden to engage in relations again until he brings her to his home, enters into privacy with her, and thus sets her aside as his.
So he has to wait another year after the first...
And however long he wants, until he's ready to have her move in.
So if he doesn't get married, he doesn't have to wait.
Yes. What? He does.
It sounds really strange, that 1 year wait.
These days, they move in before the marriage. It's a little
It's
complicated.
changed a little bit.
This setting aside is referred to as the entering into the chuppah and is universally referred to as marriage. Once a woman has entered the chuppah, her husband is allowed to have relations with her at any time he desires. She is considered to be his wife with regard to all matters. Okay. So until now, we got into the technical understanding of marriage. But one thing I want to take away from here is, marriage is a spiel. It's a big deal.
A spiel.
Yeah. It's something. It's not just an agreement. It's like we're trying to create something that wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just a decision, boyfriend, girlfriend. We're exclusive. Let's agree that we're exclusive, and now we're exclusive. We gave our word to each other. It's more than just a word. We see that the entire Torah structure is really trying to build something, to create something that wasn't, and there's very clear parameters of what that is and what that looks like. We're going to put that on the side for a moment, and I'll tell you an interesting story. Sit back.
I feel better.
Yeah. There's a... Igor, next time you bring 2 bottles. No, I'm joking.
I didn't know.
How did you know?
No, our crowd's growing.
I'll bring one to keep it spread.
He waited for everyone to finish their cup, and now he's taking it slowly.
It's an ultimate punishment.
Nice. Very, very, yeah. Classy. So, the idea is like this. There's a story, this great Talmudic genius. He lived in the past generation. His name was the Ragat Shavar Gaon. Don't try to say it fast. He was a great rabbi, really brilliant. And he one time came visiting another rabbi. This other rabbi's name was Reb Chaim Brisker. Now, both of these guys, I wouldn't know this for a fact, but the assumption is if they were out there, they would be world renowned. But they kept to Talmudic scholarship, so they're world renowned in the world of Talmud. Really, really unbelievable. Just to give you an idea of the Ragat Shavar Gaon, his method, his way of teaching, and the Talmud is right there. Plenty of books, 20 books, most complex, very, very all over the place. The Talmud has discussions and things and references. When you would ask him a question, he wouldn't answer you straight up. He would write 40 footnotes. Look here, there. And his understanding was, if you look in all those locations, you'd come to understand what his answer is. He was also extremely sharp. And one time somebody asked him not such a wise question. So he gave him 40 locations to look up. And the guy didn't understand. All these locations had nothing to do with his subject. Then he realized in every one of these locations there was a reference to not asking the smartest question. He was a very, very tough guy, but brilliant. And he came to his colleague Reb Chaim Brisker. Reb Chaim Brisker was one of the innovators of the standard way of Talmudic scholarship of today's generation. A great Litvak. Great Litvak. Not a shotgun.
Why, he was Bris.
Not related. And he comes in, the Ragat Shavar comes into Reb Chaim Brisker, and Reb Chaim Brisker wishes him Mazel Tov. So he says, why are you wishing me Mazel Tov? This is a conversation that has a little insight behind it. He says, well, you just got married. So what do you mean I just got married? So he says to him, according to your Talmudic analysis of the law of the institution of marriage, you just got married. So then he understood what he meant. What did he mean? I'll tell you next week. No, I'll tell you. It says like this. We know, and this is amazing. We know that when you do, in Judaism, there's a concept that before you do certain things, you make a blessing. You make a bracha. Before you eat something, you make a bracha. Before you do a mitzvah, right? Before you eat matzah, you're making a bracha on the mitzvah of matzah. Before you're lighting Shabbat candles, you're making a bracha. What happens if a person did the mitzvah, but they forgot to make the bracha? What do? So in most mitzvot, it's done. In most mitzvot, once you did it, it's over. However, there are some mitzvot that if you didn't make the bracha, you could still make the bracha. What does that mean? So let's go to Maimonides, text number 5. Give Michael the page over there, please. 172. A person who performed the mitzvah but mistakenly did not recite a blessing, Maimonides says, if the fulfillment of the mitzvah still continues, he may recite the blessing even though he already performed it. What does that mean? If the mitzvah is a deed that is completed, he should not recite the blessing. And this is the example. Here we go. When a person wrapped himself in tzitzit, right? They put on tzitzit in the morning. Or they put on tefillin. Or they sat in a sukkah without reciting a blessing at the beginning. After wrapping himself in tzitzit, he can still recite the blessing because he's still in the tzitzis. So it's a question of when you do the mitzvah of sitting in a sukkah, right? We know you got to sit inside a sukkah. So you go inside a sukkah and you sit down. Did I do the mitzvah? Is the mitzvah complete? What happens now? I'm still sitting in the sukkah. So the Rambam says as long as you're still sitting in the sukkah, the mitzvah is ongoing. So you're making a blessing and you're still doing the mitzvah. So it's okay. In contrast, let's look at the next paragraph. If a person wanted to eat meat, so they slaughter an animal, and before you slaughter an animal, you make a bracha, because it's a mitzvah to do shchita. and didn't recite the blessing, and then he slaughtered the animal, and then he realizes, oh my God, I didn't recite the blessing, it's too late. And the slaughter is okay, but he can't recite a blessing anymore.
Is the animal still kosher?
The animal's kosher.
So what's the downside?
What's the downside of not reciting a blessing?
Yeah.
Saying if you could get away with it and there's no practical ramifications. The downside is that you lost an opportunity to bring down God's presence in a holy way.
Oh, I knew it.
That's it?
And as they say in New York, if you care about that, it's a big deal. And if you don't care about it, it's also a big deal. You just don't care. Not you. One. Now, what about marriage? Some don't know this, but getting married is a mitzvah. You got to make a blessing before. What happens if a person got married and they were so excited?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Easy. They were so excited that they didn't make a blessing. And now they're married. So if you're really religious, you get divorced and get married again.
But
No, I'm
doesn't the
joking.
rabbi-
I'm joking.
I think he was joking. Yeah.
Doesn't the rabbi make you do the blessing when you get married? When you marry?
Maybe the
someone?
rabbi was so excited about this marriage, he also forgot the blessing.
Not a
Unlike-
very experienced
Oh,
rabbi.
then-
Not a very experienced
then he's
rabbi.
responsible for
Yeah,
it.
we wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Rabbi.
You pay him less.
That's
I
right.
should hope so.
Yeah.
I should. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Rambam says in text number 6, the wedding blessings may be recited even after days have passed. Why? Because the act of marriage is not a one-time act.
Let's hope not.
It's as you're married, you're continuously doing the mitzvah of marriage, like sitting in a sukkah, like being in a talis, like wearing the tefillin. The mitzvah is ongoing. In the words of the Ragat Shaver, it's a pa'ula nimsheches. It's a continuous accomplishment. Some marriages are a continuous, tremendous accomplishment.
Oh,
And so therefore, 2 years in, you didn't make a blessing. Make a blessing now.
How it worked they were together?
Huh?
How it worked they were together?
They were together all these years.
together.
And still we say, it says, the marriage, so the marriage is not a one-time act and now you're married. The marriage is the beginning of a process that continues. So when Ragat Shaver came into Reb Chaim Brisker told him, Mazel Tov. He said, what are you Mazel? You just got married. So the Ragat Shaver answered him, you don't need to wish me Mazel Tov. He says, why not? It's so bad. He says, no. He says, just like the marriage is continuous, the Mazel Tov that you gave me at my wedding also continued on, so it's not a problem. He says, but the gifts you could continue giving, that's fine.
That's,
No, I'm adding. That's not.
I'd say that.
Text number 7, we'll read this in the Ragat Shaver's words. According to the approach I have proposed in a number of places, Maimonides is of the opinion that marriage is renewed every day. It is not enough that one acquired a legal married status in the past, but rather it's an ongoing accomplishment. And the question is why?
Every day.
Why is it that some mitzvot we say, once you do the mitzvah, it's an act, it's done, and some mitzvot you say, it's continuous? Why isn't it, you have a mitzvah to put on a talis, you put on a talis, now you did the mitzvah. You're continuing to wear the talis, so... By the way, this is not the only thing. For example, there's a mitzvah, a person decides to make a donation to the temple in Jerusalem. It's called Hektish. It says when you go and donate and make a donation to Hektish, it's not just that you gave the donation and it lasts forever. That act was done and it's over. But rather, once you make the donation, it's continuous. And the question I'm asking is, why is some mitzvot set up in such a way that the act is the beginning of an ongoing process, and some mitzvot are a one-time accomplishment? You do it once and that's it. In order to understand this, we got to go to a different topic. Let's accept or not, but I'm going to propose that opposites, if two things are opposite, they can't come together.
Opposites attract.
You're going to see how this is related to marriage, but not yet.
Oh, okay.
Naturally, two things that are opposite, fire and water, it's opposite. It doesn't come together. We spoke about it, remember? Friday night. I have Kabbalah for you tonight, don't worry. We're going to learn some Arizal, it's going to be crazy. The other fact that I want to propose is that if opposites will come together, it will have to happen by something that's greater than both of them. Because they, in themselves, are opposites. But here's the catch. And there's always a catch. That if that thing that's bringing those things together, the way it does it is not by destroying their oppositeness. Because that's not bringing things together, that's destroying it. I'm being very abstract, so let me translate. Fire and water don't come together. Right? So, that's it. Either the water is going to extinguish the fire, or the fire is going to dry up the water. But one of the two, it's not going to happen together. If there's going to be a force that's going to bring them together, the real accomplishment would be is if the fire remains with the characteristic of fire, and the water remains with the characteristic of water, and that somehow those two things are able to come together. But if I'm going to say the way I'm going to bring fire and water together is by the water ceasing to be water, and the fire stopping to be fire, that's not bringing fire and water together. That's making fire and water stop being what they are, and of course they're together. And this is very similar to the concept of marriage, but we're going to get to that in a moment, but it's the same idea. Give you an example so there's one more point. The other point of this is that if the force that's bringing the two opposites together is in play, it always has to be in play. It can't stop doing it. If it stops doing it, then it's going to go back. Why? Because the nature of fire remained against water. The nature of water remained against fire. And the fact that they're coming together is not because of themselves, but because of something else. So if they're going to come together, that something else has to be here all the time. It's like you have two enemies. They're sitting together, they're finally having a straightforward conversation. Why? Because it's a third party that's mediating. But if the mediator knows if they leave the room, those guys are going to slaughter each other. If you accomplish that they're not enemies anymore, then that's not a big... It's an accomplishment, but it's not... Then they don't need to still be there. Now you've changed the nature of who they are.
But no two-state solution.
The example that's given is, in Chassidus, is imagine you throw a stone. Now, the stone does not have a nature of flying. A stone naturally will fall to the ground. But you look up and you see a stone flying in the air. You say, what happened? Someone threw the stone. So what does that mean? Now the stone became a flying stone? Now the stone became a flying stone?
No, it changed the function.
The answer is the stone never became a flying stone. What happened was the energy that the person exerted from their arm embraced the stone and carried it forward, high. But as soon as the energy stops, the stone's going to go back down. So now let's ask a question. Not when it stopped. While the stone is still flying, it still maintained the nature of being a stone that falls. You say, for 5 minutes that was a flying stone, and then the energy stopped. It's not a flying stone. That's not how it works. Even while it's flying, it's a stone that falls. Why is it flying? Because you have something else that's bringing it to fly. And so too also with everything else. it says about the creation of the universe that the creation is an accomplishment of opposites. Why? Because to take spirituality and to create physical manifestations of spirituality is impossible. It's like, imagine if my mind, I'm going to say that I think, according to all equations, this bottle should move to this side of the table. Okay? My mind can think about that forever. In reality, this is not going to move there.
People, they're thirsty. They're thirsty on that side of the table.
It moved because his hand moved it. But my mind will never move it. Why? Because my mind is logical, is in the world of thought. The bottle's in the world of action, physical. And the world of thought and the world of action, they don't merge. So we talk about the creation of the universe. God had a spiritual realm, and from the spiritual realm, He created a physical universe. How do you create something physical from spiritual? That's why it says that God has to constantly recreate the world. I'm not going to go through this text 10, but that's the idea over here. It's a long text. It's in the Alter Rebbe. He says, he quotes what it says in Scripture, forever Hashem, your words stand in the heavens. And the Baal Shem Tov explains that the words that Hashem uttered to create the world continuously stay in the universe. It's not that He said, let there be light, and now there's light, and God's like, okay, I can move away. He has to continuously recreate light. He has to continuously recreate the universe. And that's the nature. Why? Because the universe in and of itself would not be able to maintain, would not be able to continue existing. That's why some mitzvot are ongoing accomplishments, and some mitzvot, once you do it, it's enough. The Rebbe explains that some mitzvot, they're an accomplishment of such magnitude that in order for them to make that accomplishment, it has to be ongoing. Read text 9. The same is true in halakha. Hektish, for example, in the Raga Shava's reasoning, when you take something holy, something mundane, and you say, I'm donating it to the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. That act was transforming something mundane into something holy. How is that going to happen? You can't transform something into what it isn't. It has to be an ongoing accomplishment. I'm going to jump here to the bottom line, and then maybe we'll work backwards to the Kabbalah. Same thing as with marriage. It says, when Moses came up to heaven, they say, if you want to have a... I'll tell you, it reminds you of another joke. First I'll say the other joke. There was one time, a woman comes to a rabbi. She says, Rabbi, do you remember me? He says, I don't remember who you are. She says, 20 years ago, my husband and I, we were married for quite a few years. We came to you and we asked you for advice. We weren't able to have any children. And you told us to go to Jerusalem, go to the Western Wall, and to write a letter to God, put it inside the wall, and ask God for a blessing for children. He says, really? Wow, okay. He says, Rabbi, you wouldn't believe it. Since then we've had 13 kids.
Take that thing out of the
Wow. So Rabbi says, that's unbelievable. That's great. I'm so glad. He says, and where's your husband? He says, he's in Jerusalem trying to find the paper to take it out of the wall.
Exactly.
You called it. They say if a person is having a hard time finding a marriage, they should go to the Western Wall and pray for 40 days. So somebody said, you know why that's a good way to bring about marriage? Because a good introduction to marriage is to practice speaking to a wall for 40 days.
That's a good point there. It's a lot of wisdom.
But the truth is, there's a lot of insight and connection between the concept of 40 days and marriage. And what's the connection? It says that when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to accomplish forgiveness from God after the Jewish people sinned with the golden calf, 39 days in, it's not working. And then on the 40th day, it says he recited the following prayer. Text 10. Hashem, Hashem, Lord, Lord, benevolent God, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abundant in loving kindness and truth, preserving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin. Yet he does not completely clear of sin. He visits the iniquity of parents and children, etc. He says this prayer in text 10, and God forgives the Jewish people. What page is it on?
You don't have to.
It went to 11. It's 11. Yeah. But 11 is what you just read. Our text 11.
We have 9 and 11.
Yeah, 9 to 11. Lord, Lord, benevolent Shem.
Okay.
We
Text
did.
11.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Deal.
So forget 10. That's all right.
Right.
He's perfect.
This throws off the whole class. Forget it. So the Arizal explains these are 13 attributes of mercy. They're the highest, greatest level, very much connected to the month of Elul. Now what he adds over here is, this is so interesting. He says that the masculine comes from one attribute and the feminine comes from another attribute. If you read text 11b, you don't have 11b.
You got 12A.
Yeah, 12A.
What does 12a start with?
They are in this order.
No. What about the next one? Beautiful. You know, it keeps everybody awake.
12B.
Yeah, everyone's like looking for the page. It's good.
Beard of a long face.
Know that in the beard of the long face,
Yeah, that's 12B.
yes, there are two mazalot, two attributes. The upper mazel is called preserving kindness, the 8th attribute, and the lower mazel is clear of sin, the 13th attribute. These two attributes are called mazel, and they are two mazalot. And let's jump to the last paragraph. These two mazalot lie on one another. They are male and female. The male draws sustenance from the 8th attribute, and the female, the mother, draws sustenance from the 13th. So you know the book, men are from Mars, women are from Venus? What we can say is that, what is it? Men are from Notzer, and women are from Nake. These are the two mazalot of the 13 attributes up in heaven. Now, what's the bottom line over here? Men and women naturally come from different places, and naturally they don't come together. Even though we started the class describing that they were created as one, but then in the process of that division, they don't come together. And the act of bringing them together needs to be from something greater than who they are. And that's why there's a therapy called, for example, it's not why, but it's interesting, it's called imago therapy. Anybody heard of imago therapy? It's a therapy where couples come together to a therapist, and the focus, from what I understand, the focus of the therapy is the therapist treats the marriage like a patient. Usually when the two people come to marriage therapy, when a couple comes to marriage therapy, you're treating this person and this person, and you're trying to figure out how to align these two parties. But there's only but there are two parties in the room. In the imago therapy, there's only one party in the room, and that's the marriage. And then it's a question about bringing these two, the couple, around helping preserve and making this marriage, this institution work. And I think it's very insightful.
I like it.
Right? Because usually when you try to, if each person tries to get their own issues resolved in the process of the marriage, well, you end up as you used to have two people with issues. Now you have two people with issues and a marriage issue. It doesn't work usually.
And what's the success of it?
What's the success of it? Well, we see it's dwindling over time. So the concept over here is a very interesting thing, that the Torah understands that men and women naturally come from different places. And the institution of marriage is a separate institution, like we started the class describing the fact that there's so much that goes on in order for a marriage to really exist. It has to be an establishment, and that is its own power, and that brings them together. Not, and here's the key, we said when you bring together fire and water, you don't want the fire to stop being fire. You don't want the man to stop being a man. You don't want the woman to stop being a woman. You want them to be who they are, maintain their differences and their opposites, and the power of marriage is that while they're separate, it could be together. But how could a marriage work? We said, how do you bring opposites together? By constantly being there. So that's why marriage, according to the Torah, is an ongoing process. So if you didn't make a bracha before the marriage, you can make it during, because it's continuously happening. And that's when the Rogachover came to Reb Chaim Brisker. He told Mazel Tov, your marriage just came. That's also why you may notice why a lot of people have the custom, when they wish Mazel Tov, they say it twice. Some people feel like it's a twitch. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Right? Like it's just a tendency, you just say something twice because you're still working up what you're going to wish them. Mazel Tov, I want to wish you. It sounds better. Mazel Tov, it sounds more dramatic, but the Rebbe says an unbelievable thing here in text 13. May the wedding, the Rebbe wished this, the Rebbe says like this, may the wedding be in a good and auspicious hour, and with Mazel Tov, as is the regular phrase used in the context of marriage. This corresponds to the two mazels. Remember we said that there's 13 attributes, and in the 13 attributes, two of them is Neitzer and Nake in a marriage, and the two mazels merge, and that's the accomplishment of marriage. And that's what we wish the Mazel Tov, that the Mazel of Neitzer and the Mazel of Nake should be good, and that's what brings about the accomplishment of marriage. So what do we have over here? What we have is, we asked at the beginning of the question, how do you keep, at the beginning of the class, how do you keep your marriage thrive? So I think a person there's a lot could be said about it, and a person naturally, we come to our marriage, we have our own baggage, and all these things need to be sorted out. But I think a key thing that Torah is teaching us is that we have to understand the marriage as a separate, ongoing institution. It's not like we were separate people, we joined together, and that's it. The marriage is separate, and it's ongoing, and it's continuously bringing us together. So just like we were separate before, and the day of our wedding we got together, and we understand the power of that. We were one, I was one, you were somebody separate. Now with the marriage we're coming together, and it's so amazing, and that is a combination of three. That institution needs to be constantly preserved and be seen as an ongoing process. And in seeing the power of this ongoing process, we can really appreciate the fact that it could be refreshed. We could sit on a Tuesday night and sit around on the couch and look and say, you know what? It's just happened. It's so miraculous, it's so powerful, it's so amazing. This marriage just happened. And the power of that and the blessing of Hashem that goes along with that, this has all come together. And Torah is also with this telling us to understand that it ought to be, the reason why the marriage has to continuously be there, because naturally it should be coming apart on a daily basis. With the fact that the marriage has to continuously reassert itself on a daily basis is because a healthy marriage should in a sense be in such a structure where if the man is being loyal to his masculinity and the woman is being loyal to her womanhood, it should be in this place where there's a separation and it's rejoining. Separation doesn't mean literally every single day there has to be a discussion about divorce. But the point is that there's this oncoming and giving, and so in Kabbalah it's called Ratzei V'Shuv, distance and getting close. Distance and getting close. Longing, coming together, distancing, longing, coming together, and this is really the secret and the power to keeping it all together. The next class we'll talk about practically how you do that.
Practically.